Well, I've brought up a more generic article being hungry for dividends. And I read an article about how a lot of investors are going into the Australian share market and in particular the Australian S&P top 200 because there's more dividends being paid out per shareholder. Now, what interests me about that was the headline's always the headline, and if you dig in deeper, there's obviously some more substantial numbers to work through. But to give you an example, the Australian SAX 200 pays out 4.5% a year on dividends, which is paid back to shareholders. And when you look at the US, they only pay out 1.5% in dividends on the S&P 500 in the US. So there's a difference of how the market's made up. Like I know the S&P 500 in the US have Tesla, Amazon, so a lot of tech stuff that doesn't pay out a lot of dividends. Where the Australian market, we get a huge boost with mining companies that can pay up to 8 to 10%, and something like a Vodafone at 6.7%. So yeah, big dividends. But there's three sides to every coin. And what you really need to understand is what is the overall capital growth of the shares in both portfolios, and how do you get a fairer picture of understanding what the real dollars mean. So, for example, if you look at the Australian growth over the last 10 years on the ASX 200, that's at 7.21% average. And over the last 10 years, the S&P 500 in the US is currently at 13.6% average. So there's quite a substantial difference there. So I went to work just compounding the interest and putting the shares back in just to see, well, what would it work out? Which one would work better? And on $100,000 over 10 years with the shares and the dividends reinvested, you'd find that the Australian market had 302,625, and the S&P 500 US was 408,084. Now, I'm not saying invest in one or the other. You'd probably be diversified in EFTs and have your own personal plan. But it's really interesting, again, from a marketing standpoint, how these headlines come out and they're going, yeah, they're all flooding into the Australian market because of dividends. And that's great. Don't get me wrong. That's fine. But there's still more to this puzzle that you need to dig in deep to understand. You could be down 100,000 if you're following a headline. So that's the only point I was trying to make there. Dig in beyond the headline, do your own investigation, talk to people like Nick and Jace, and make sure you've got a good strategic plan forward for your business or your share portfolio or your superannuation.